Keep Judy in your thoughts. She's had a spill yesterday. Keep her in her thoughts. Michelle Lattanzio. For those of you who have trouble remembering Michelle's last name, it is only a block long. No problem. Lattzoo, Lattzoo, not TZU, ZOO. She's there with Mark, the better half. He makes pancakes every Sunday. It's so annoying. Nobody makes pancakes in this house.
You're missing
Take that
out.
back. Whoa, the hand. Say, show the hand. The hand, in fact, did make pancakes, but she didn't make them with all the junk in it. She made like natural, good, healthy pancakes. They were all healthy. They didn't have any of the junk. We got Bobby Vance, who's going to be sharing with us today too. We got Nick, Pat Sullivan from the land of Dune, Arrakis. We got Chet, who is in North Miami. Felix is here in town. He's over. You're in Miami too, but what part of Miami, Felix? I forget.
Shenandoah, Little Havana.
Shenandoah. Yeah, right. Okay. Oh, you're a representative in the House on the city council. Just got slapped with a $61 million fine. Yes, it was wonderful. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Mary Grimmy is here from a very small village on the west coast of Florida. You may have heard of it, Tampa. Amelia Schweitzer is 10 miles west of Merritt Island. Danny Sorkin is also in Arrakis. They've been having a lot of fun this week. Cecilia Sandro is down the street. Alan and Nettie are in Washington. Serge Cruz is in the land of scorpions and spiders, who have become his fast friends and cousins. Chris Diaz is in North Miami. So let me say welcome to everybody as we begin today. Michelle is going to be sharing. Bobby's going to be bringing us up to date on Juneteenth. Let me just say, before Bobby even does that, if you are behind the ball on Juneteenth, a lot of us were. In fact, Maureen, Pat's sister, said to me one time, why didn't you put up Juneteenth? And to be very honest with you, that totally missed me. So if any of you are as backwards as I am, Bobby's going to bring us up to date, and I hope it can do so regularly every year so we can keep ourselves up to date on probably one of the most important dates of our calendar in this country. All right. We got Serge is going to be reading a lesson from Matthew. Larry Deitch is going to be up at the end of the month. Everybody, Larry Deitch is going to be up at the end of the month. Then on July 9th, Andrea Hawkins Camper is going to be sharing. Michelle is going to be assisting, and I will be assisting. Book club. Those of you in book club, we need some information from you. Do you want to meet on July 1st or not? Danny needs some spell. He's been doing this for weeks in and weeks out and asked me if he could be spelled for a while. And I just so happens there's been a whole bunch of new research on Taoism. And I say I would be glad to take over for the chapter on Taoism. Same book, same everything, except bringing you up updated on Taoism. But you need to know us when you want to start. So just give us some information. Okay, Donald officially becomes the parish administrator on July 1. He's doing most of the work this month, but officially he's our new parish administrator. That means from now on, whenever you have any problems whatsoever, any issues whatsoever, anything that goes wrong, any complaints, I'll give you his home number.
Did they talk about?
Sorry about that. Good help with it. Let's see. Oh, I have some sad news for you. Cracker Barrel Restaurant has sinned mightily. Well, I do declare they have sinned. They have sinned. It turns out for the last year, their premium sausage is plant-based. Plant-based. And on top of that, they now have a show of all of these chairs in the front of their restaurant. Are you ready for this? It has caused a firestorm overnight. a chair with a pride colors. Cracker Barrel is now serving woke pancakes with plant-based sausage, and all hell's broken loose. And the Southerners are upset. Why? They have sinned. They have sinned mightily. They've gone pride. I say they've gone pride. I just share that with you as I saw that yesterday in the news. Cracker Barrel. Last thing, a couple of things about pictures. And then we'll go ahead and begin. Pictures. You're sending in lots of pictures. I want you to know Donald has now done a spreadsheet on Excel. So whenever you send pictures, we have enough pictures now. We're going to have months and months, weeks and weeks and weeks. So if you send it in, you don't see it immediately, it will be shown. Lots of pictures coming up. We've got pets. We've got outdoor pictures. We've got pictures of your faces that were banned on the internet. We've got all kinds of goodies there. So by all means, continue to send your pictures. They will make it in. Notice how many we had this week. We had like 8 or 9 pictures on the weekly this week. So send in what you've got. And finally, too, please remember, we are around the clock as a congregation. We do not stop during the summer. I was surprised to see that lots of congregations in the Unitarian Universal Association actually close up during the summer, or they go very half speed. I remember once hearing a very, very famous church consultant, Lyle Schaller, and he said, if you stop during the summer, it'll take you months to get going in the fall, which is just stupid. He also said, if you offer junk in the summer, why would anybody attend? He said, if you're going to be a church, you're going to be a fellowship, a congregation, then you go every Sunday or whenever you gather equally. None of this sloughing off in the summer. Why would anybody attend? You'll notice that we have never, ever stopped in the summer. We keep going and keep going and keep going. Book club goes, we go, services go. We try to offer the same amount of annoyingness as we do in the fall, winter, and spring. So remember here, when you can, remember also to give, because we don't stop in the summer. We still have bills to pay, if you remember us kindly. Okay, having said that, we want to light a candle, sadly, today for numbers of people who are having to leave Florida now because of legislation about trans medicine. There have been several people who can't get their medicine now and are having to leave the state of Florida or thinking about it. And there are others who have had trouble getting served medicine because it violated somebody's religious rights, and they were not referred, as they're supposed to be, to somebody else in the pharmacy. We've had all kinds of personal issues happen here, including books being looked at because one person decides to decide for everybody else, causing tremendous upset and tremendous anxiety amongst fine, loving, kind people. So remembering them all today, light a prayer in kindness and love and compassion. Thank you. And we welcome this morning Hal and Linda from Port Orange, and Tom and Gail Besaw also from Port Orange. Okay, we begin our service then with a introit by the welcome table from the Chancel Choir of the Unitarian Church of Oakland, California. Our call to worship, I will ask you to say with me, if you wish. We'll read it together. For those of you who would, one by one, in tiny increments, candle by candle, gesture by effort, wish by prayer, concern by care, we feed the life fires of the soul and light the infinite universe little by little from within. And for those of you who would wish to read with me together the morning prayer, Creator God, ground of our being, help us remember the words of one of your faithful servants, Blessed Padre Pio. As we begin in earnest this summer season, pray, hope, and don't worry. Let this be our daily ritual of renewal. Help us nourish hope in the world every day. Amen. The Gospel of Matthew used the author's own special sources and the Gospel of Mark. And it's guessed that this gospel was written 2 generations after Jesus died, somewhere in the 80s, possibly at Antioch. And maybe a synagogue that had turned to see Jesus as the Messiah and also started gathering Gentiles and pagans in the synagogue as well. It was then a growing mixed group. We're asking Serge to read from this reading today from the Gospel of Matthew, which became, in the 2nd century, the most popular of the Gospels. Serge, if you would.
Matthew chapter 9. Give me 1 second. I'm just having some trouble reading it. There we go. Matthew chapter 9, verse 18 through 25. While he was saying these things to them, suddenly a leader of the synagogue came in and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hands on her, and she will live." And Jesus got up and followed him with his disciples. Then suddenly a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak. For she said to herself, "If I only touch his cloak, I will be made well." Jesus turned and seeing her, he said, "Take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well." And instantly the woman was made well. When Jesus came to the leader's house and saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion, he said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took her by the hand, and the girl got up.
Our responsive reading today, for those of you who wish, if you would be kind enough to read the green. You are ritual. Your breath is the air of knowing. Your body grounding the earth. Your spirit, the fire of intention. Your blood, the ebb and flow of deep waters, emotions. You are ritual. Never forget you are magic, made flesh and blood and whole. Yours and sacred spells are written in your soul. And doing a reading this morning is now Michelle.
Some years ago, I was stuck on a crosstown bus in New York City during rush hour. Traffic was barely moving. The bus was filled with cold, tired people who were deeply irritated with one another, with the world itself. Rage was in the air. No mercy would be found here. But as the bus approached 7th Avenue, the driver got on the intercom. "Folks," he said, "I know you have had a rough day and you are frustrated. I can't do anything about the weather or traffic, but here is what I can do. As each one of you gets off the bus, I will reach out my hand to you." I just lost my. "As you walk by, drop your troubles into the palm of my hand, okay? Don't take your problems home to your families tonight. Just leave them with me. My route goes right by the Hudson River, and when I drive by there later, I will open the window and throw your troubles in the water." It was as if a spell had lifted. Everyone burst out laughing. At the next stop, just as promised, the driver reached out his hand, palm up, and waited. One by one, all the exiting commuters placed their hand just above his and mimed the gesture of dropping something into his palm. Some people laughed as they did this. Some teared up but everyone did it. The driver repeated the same lovely ritual at the next stop too, and the next, all the way to the river. We live in a hard world, my friends. There are times when everything seems cloaked in darkness. You long for the light, but don't know where to find it. But what if you are the light? What if you are the very agent of illumination that a dark situation begs for? That's what this bus driver taught me, that anyone can be the light at any moment. No matter who you are or where you are or how mundane or tough your situation may seem, I believe you can illuminate your world. In fact, I believe this is the only way the world will ever be illuminated, one bright act of grace at a time, all the way to the river. On ritual. Here at All Souls Miami, we participate in ritual every time we gather. Our agape meal, the Jesus meal of shared fellowship, is a very old ritual indeed, one that in its essence dates back to much earlier than Jesus himself. We share in food and drink symbolically and physically for nourishment of our bodies and our spirits, and reaffirm our connection to each other across the miles, across the internet. It is communion of a kind, a sacred act taken together, and thus it is ritual. It is a different ritual than the one I participated in as a young person growing up in the Catholic Church, where the communion meal was supposedly the body and blood of Jesus Christ, transformed by the power of God worked through the priest, God's representative here on earth, per Catholic dogma. The entire Catholic Mass, in fact, is one large ritual broken up into smaller ones during the course of the service. It is the one thing I truly loved about going to church. All the ritual elements that I can count on being there week in and week out, many opportunities within the service to actually connect with the divine. What I did not say out loud, of course, was that I was connecting to the divine as I understood it, which was significantly different than what I was supposed to be thinking. In a way, though, that is the special magic of rituals. Rituals create a sacred space in which we can experience a transcendent moment in an immanent world. Whether we completely concur with the language being used, indeed, if any language is used at all, we can connect with the sacredness of the space and the moment and access the divine within us, our highest self, the ground of our being, whatever it is we each call that animates us. Because I am a word nerd, English degree, I dug into the etymology of the word ritual and found that it goes back to the 14th century from the Latin word ritus, R-I-T-U-S, meaning custom or rite, and particularly religious observances or ceremonies. We have all kinds of rituals in our lives. Daily rituals of spiritual and physical nourishment like morning coffee or tea, movement like yoga or walking the dogs, perhaps prayer, or for me, a gratitude practice. There are routines and there are rituals, and they are different things. The difference being the sacredness that the experience offers, the kind of container created, and the energy present. Rituals involve a sense of vulnerability, a removal of barriers to the transcendent that some of us call God. I try to participate in several rituals each day, as this is what keeps me grounded in my faith, my communities of care, and my covenant with all living things. Ritual reminds me that I am connected to everyone and everything here and across the cosmos, seen and unseen. The Lakota tribe has a beautiful saying that encapsulates this reality. Mitakuye Oyasin, which means all of my relations. Thinking of the world through this lens of all my relations strengthens my universalist faith and reminds me that all of life is holy and nothing that lives is outside of that sacred hoop. Even people and beings that I genuinely dislike, those too are holy and sacred within this framework. And because I am human and thus limited in my grasp of holiness, I can forgive myself when I fall short of loving everyone and everything. Ritual involves at its core making meaning in our lives, not just finding meaning, but making meaning. It is a generative process. It involves processing our mundane experiences and the flotsam of our lives and coming up with a way to connect to joy, to grace, to love beyond our comprehension, and to deep peace. Our bus driver in today's reading is keenly aware of his ability to help his riders make meaning of their troubles and their sorrows as he extends his hand to them to hold their cares gently all the way to the river, where he casts them into the Hudson and commits them to the living waters. He is not defined by a priest as a priest or a holy man by calling. He's a bus driver and he's doing his daily duties. But in that moment, he creates a sacred space and performs a simple but powerful ritual that feeds the spirits of his riders. What a gift he gave them. This is grace in action, executed by a version of the age-old ritual of extending a hand to others in fellowship and care. As the writer of that piece, Elizabeth Gilbert, says in our reading, we can always choose to be the light that shines in the darkness. Sometimes we will be the only one who can do so in that moment. We are indeed all related, and we all need each other to survive. As Hezekiah Walker sings in his song, I Need You to Survive. He sings, I need you, you need me. We're all a part of God's body. We sang this often at Vespers in seminary, hand to hand, and it seemed to bring us together in spirit and remind us of that interconnectedness, that interdependence. This connects to our reading today by C. Era Campbell, who wrote that your body itself is a ritual, composed of the four elements of air, earth, fire, and water, magic made flesh, blood, and whole, with sacred spells written in your soul. Paul Simon, in today's song, Hearts and Bones, speaks to the way that love can bind people together, both within and without the bond of marriage, as he sings, you take two bodies and you twirl them into one, their hearts and their bones, and they won't come undone. The magic of the ritual has permeated their very bones and endures beyond the breaking of vows. In our gospel reading from Matthew, a woman suffering for 12 years touches the very fringe of Jesus's cloak in an act of faith, employing the ritual of touching a sacred object. And Jesus proclaims to her that her faith has made her well. He then goes on to, of course, to lay hands on a sick girl, presumed dead, and raises her up in wellness. Hands and touching other people and sacred objects is old magic indeed. The most moving ritual, perhaps, that I have observed in my work as a hospice chaplain may be the simple act of holding a patient's hand, just holding hands. As even if they are not conscious and responsive, they can feel the act and be comforted by it, by knowing on some level that they are not alone and another human being has showed them loving care and offered connection in a simple animal gesture. Indeed, animals throughout the animal kingdom participate in rituals of various kinds, including hand-holding. And at least I consider these rituals to contain a spiritual kernel because they are celebrating their connection as living beings. In essence, they're spirits. I read in the Washington Post about a scientist named Caitlin O'Connell, who's an animal behaviorist specializing in elephants. And she wrote that animal ritual occurs in 10 contexts: greeting, group rituals, courtship, gifting, spoken rituals, unspoken rituals, play, grieving and healing, renewal, and travel or migration. Essentially, then, all aspects of our lives as animals involve ritual, not just because we are human beings, but because we are part of the animal kingdom, and ritual behavior is inherent in our nature. To me, this is a powerful reminder of the ways in which ritual binds us all together in the interdependent web of life. What kinds of rituals do each of you perform daily or occasionally that bring you joy and grace and connection? I encourage you to think about that. And my hope for today is that when you leave this sacred space, our fellowship time together, that you can reflect on your own rituals and consider the ways in which they feed you spiritually. Because every act can be imbued with meaning and such become a ritual, thus connecting us to the divine love that holds us all close and never lets us go. That force which is both transcendent and immanent. May it be so, and may we be the ones to make it so. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be.
We began this morning with a song about the welcome table. We have a welcoming meal every time we gather. And in all of this, if you're like me, I forgot an incredibly important part of American history. And when Bobby Vance asked, can I say a few words, meaning Bobby, about Juneteenth, immediately I said, yes, anytime you wish. So Bobby's going to share some thoughts and words with us as this incredibly important date is approaching. Bobby, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kenneth, and good morning, everyone. This particular group, I've noticed we've had people here that are very well read, very good researchers. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on history and dates because you can do that yourself. But what you can't do is hear a little bit of the perspective of a person who a couple of generations ago, it was my great maybe grandparents that were actually a focus of this Juneteenth holiday celebration because they were the ones that were emancipated. They were the ones that were working out in the field. And so I just want to give you that sort of personal perspective. But Juneteenth, which is on June 19th, is a holiday for all Americans, actually, because if you think about it, Juneteenth was the culmination of couple of hundred years process to go from slavery to freedom and where the United States of America decided that we will end this practice. And every single person here has come from somewhere. I don't think, I'm looking around at the pictures and names, and I don't think there's anybody here that came on the Mayflower. I could be wrong. And I don't think anybody's here that a couple of generations ago owned a plantation and had slaves. So that being said, everybody here came from somewhere. And one thing emancipation did, starting with the Emancipation Proclamation, it guaranteed you that when your ancestors came to this country, and trust me, I know they had a hard time, because that's what America does to everybody that's new. They give them a hard time. It's prejudice, it's discrimination. But one thing America will never, ever, ever do again, they will not take away who you are. You will always know where you came from. You will always remember the old country. You will always have your food that you ate. You will always have the music that you listened to. You will always have the rituals that you were brought up with. You will even be able to go back, if you can afford, to the old country to reconnect. And that is what America stole from the Africans. And after a couple of generations, they weren't Africans anymore, but they weren't Americans either. They were just adrift in this country. And the date on June 19th symbolically ended that drift. Now, to be honest with you, when General George Granger rode into Galveston and he read General Order 3 and said the Emancipation Proclamation and said, "You people are free." And they usually, if you go on Google, it will say that Juneteenth celebrates the freedom of the slaves. Well, actually, if you look at it, they were freed from bondage. They were no longer slaves. But freedom, I'm not so sure about that. That's sort of a hard to define concept. Just take the example of somebody living in an abusive relationship, and you're in this abusive home, you and your children, and it's terrible, but somebody calls the police come in and they tell the abuser, "You can't do this anymore. You can't do it anymore. And to make sure you don't do it, we're going to come to your house every day and check, random checks, to make sure that you don't do these things anymore." So of course you're happy now, you're free, but really are you? Because the abuser hasn't been changed. And as long as the police are coming, doing their random checks, the abuser will not abuse. And that was the South after the Emancipation Proclamation. As long as Union soldiers were down there, the abusers were not going to abuse. But their minds were saying, they said, "I'm not an abuser. I'm just trying to keep my household straight. And she doesn't even really cook, and these kids are bad, and they deserve what I gave them, but I can't do it now because the police may catch me." That's Juneteenth, the period of Reconstruction. But once the Union soldiers left, the police did not come back to check. And guess what? Even though we had Juneteenth and people were celebrating Juneteenth in the South, they could sense that things were changing and they really weren't free. And trust me, history just shows that it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. Still free, still not slaves, but not free. When I grew up, when I was young, I remember being a young person, and I remember the March on Washington and Martin Luther King gave that speech. And one of the things he said in the speech that just resonated with me about talking about Juneteenth, that he talked about the Emancipation Proclamation in the 1960s. And he said, 100 years later, and the Negro is still not free. He said 100 years later, the Negro is still chained by the manacles of discrimination and the chains of segregation. He said 100 years later, the Negro is still adrift on a lonely island of poverty, surrounded by a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, we're still celebrating Juneteenth. It's still important, but freedom has still yet to be fully attained. And if you notice with a lot of, and I'm looking at the clock, Ken.
Oh, it's fine.
Okay, if you notice a lot of the things that are going on today, insurrectionists trying to hold people accountable, no matter what their position or title for what they did. I always imagine what would have happened in 1860 if they had have held people accountable. What would have happened if they looked and said, we've had generals from West Point, our highest military academy, sworn to protect and defend the Constitution, engage in treasonous acts that resulted in carnage like this country has never seen. And what if, just what if they said, we'll apply the laws. We have laws, and the United States is a nation of laws. We'll apply the laws of the land to the situation at hand. Sort of like what they did after World War II. I think they called it the Nuremberg trials. Now, I'm not talking vengeance. I'm just talking equal application of the law, because whenever there was a slave rebellion and people fought physically for their freedom against what they felt was oppressors, guess what the law did? Firing squad, hanging everybody that was even associated with it. The law came down on that hard. After the Civil War, not so much, sort of a wink and a nod. Okay, you guys were a little bit out of line, but okay, you can go on. And you know what? They have gone. I'm from New York, never lived in the South before. I live in the South now. It's quite an eye-opener. The Civil War, they may have won all the battles, but I don't know if they've really won the war yet. But to this particular group, I say, it's people like you that give me hope that the idea and the spirit of Juneteenth can go forward in a better way, because it's a national holiday now. Now America has to deal with it. You could be out in the most Midwest little rural place where there's no Black people at all, but Juneteenth is still a national holiday, and your schools still have to teach it. And once the young people learn, they ask questions, and that's how you build a new movement. And that's how I hope optimistically Juneteenth will be a unifying thing for the United States, and not a continuation of the forever continual strife for freedom. Now, there's an official poem for Juneteenth that I wanted Carrie to read, and I just wanted to end it on a positive note. So Carrie, if you could read the Juneteenth poem.
Okay, the poem is We Rose by Christina Kay. We rose, from Africa's heart we rose, already a people, our faces ebon, our bodies lean, we rose. Skills of art, life, beauty, and family. Crushed by forces we knew nothing of, we rose. Survive we must, we did, we rose. We rose to be you. We rose to be me. Above everything expected, we rose. To become the knowledge we never knew, we rose. Dream we did, act we must.
Thank you all souls and have a good, happy Juneteenth.
I don't know about the rest of you, but are we blessed? Are we blessed to hear? Are we blessed to hear? I cannot thank Bobby enough. I cannot thank of all of the groups represented here enough. And Bobby, to make you laugh, remember my grandfather was full-blooded Mohawk. So when people talk about immigration, I have a good time. Thank you for who you are and what you bring to us and help us grow. Thank you all deeply, deeply, deeply. The welcoming table. This ritual is older than almost humankind. It started in what we now call Turkey 11, 12,000 years ago, where they first made wheat. Not the kind of wheat we had today, but it was a very rough kind. And what do you do when you're poor and somebody comes by? You offer simple flat bread. You don't dare drink the water, so you water down some homemade wine, and you'd offer the most simple thing you could. A simple bowl, simple watered wine and some bread, and you would say, sit. And we meant sit, not at a table. You sat. You sat on your legs and your butt, you sat down, and you talked and welcomed, and you shared some simple bread, some simple cup. This meal we do every time we gather to remind us that the table is symbolic. It is a welcome table for all. And in that mode, we say the following words together, and I ask you to repeat after me. Classic words from all things St. Winnie the Pooh. If you read after me so kindly. Promise me you'll remember. You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, smarter than you think. God didn't promise days without pain, laughter without sorrows, sun without rain. But the divine did promise strength for the day, comfort for the tears, and light for the way. And Michelle is going to read the last concluding prayer for us.
Today's closing prayer comes from John Lou Johnstone. We shall overcome when we can truly celebrate the diversity of contributions and talents offered by all people. We shall overcome hatred and prejudice and oppression. When we can truly extend our hands to one another in loving acceptance, we shall overcome the past that haunts us now. Living in peace and freedom, we shall overcome the wrongs that happened and the debts left unpaid. Let us join together in that commitment to overcome. Let us say together, Amen.
Amen. Now may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rains fall softly upon your fields. And when we meet again, may the divine in me greet and embrace the divine in you. Amen. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Donald, for tech. Thank you for Lattanzio and Mark for being here and sharing. Bobby, you are a blessing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Bobby.
And give Carrie a big
you,
hug
Bobby.
from all of us.
Thank
Give
you,
give Carrie a big hug
Thank
from
you,
all
Bobby.
of us.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Happy
Nick. for-
belated birthday to Maria, Mark, and Odalis.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's right.
Thank
Maria
you.
turned 27 today, this week. Mark turned 32, and my nose has just grown a foot. Bobby and Carrie, you two are a blessing to us. Thank you so much. And Nick, I owe you a great deal of gratitude again for reminding me of something I forgot. Thank you, Nick. Chet, my classmate, is here again visiting. He's in North Miami by the airport. Thank you, Chet, for being with us. Felix, good morning to you. And our best Jose. Mary Grimmy happens to be the mother of Donald Grimmy, but never admits it.
That's
I've
impossible.
known Mary and Donald for what seems to be decades. Rick and Judy are here. Pat Sullivan from Arrakis. Yes, Pat Sullivan from Arrakis this week, where all the sand was, yes, spicy. Tom and Gail from Port Orange. Good morning. Good morning. Serge from the land of creeping things, Sedona.
And
Danny
I'm driving
Sorkin
around
also-
in Homestead.
Yes, also Danny Sorkin from Arrakis. We're on a roll here today. Cecilia from down the street. Alan and Eddie in Washington, D.C. Chris Diaz waiting to go to Arrakis to get some of that spice for some kind of meal. Pat Kincaid here from Miami. Maureen Sullivan from down in the land of spiders as well. Amelia Schweitzer, 10 miles from Merritt Island. And Nick here by the airport as well. Good morning, blessings to you all. Larry Deach is coming up, and then after Larry, we've got Andrea. We've got a full summer packed and planned. Good to see you all, and again, Bobby and Carrie, thank you so much. You make a
Yes.
great team. I love the way you work together. Blessings and peace to you all now. Bye-bye.
Yes. So these are some books.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank
Thank
you,
These were
Nick.
the,
for showing
these were
some
the,
books.
these
Thank
were
you.
some of the books that were like banned in one school in Miami.
What? You
We
can't
had
be
it- we had-
serious.
Yeah, you didn't hear about it? That there was an event at the other church, Cargill's Congregational, that they were giving with books and books. They were giving these books for free. So the ABCs of Black History was banned for elementary school kids. They said, oh, it's not appropriate. It's not age appropriate. So they banned the ABCs of Black History. They banned Love to Langston and the Hills We Climb by Amanda Gorman for elementary school kids. They were like, oh, we put it over, it's middle school appropriate. So I was like, you know, and it was one parent. If you can look on Twitter, you find it's one parent did one thing, signed some form, and they banned the books for kids.
And do I understand that the parent that started this never even read any of the books?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
She
That is
thought-
You
correct.
understand
The thing
correctly.
about it, she thought the Hills We Climb was written by
She
Oprah.
thought Oprah Winfrey wrote it
Right, right.
Yes.
because Oprah Winfrey wrote the foreword. So she
Yes.
saw Oprah's name on the book and said, oh, I don't.
They never even.
Like, oh, Oprah, no.
You will know, by the way, that for every action, there is a reaction. And in case you missed this, two massive reactions took place this week. The Supreme Court of the United States slammed the state of Alabama for racism. And the way they did gerrymandering, slammed it, caught it by surprise. And a massive federal judge ruling in Tennessee completely struck down the anti-gay and anti-trans laws, saying you absolutely trampled the First and 14th Amendment of the United States. And if you've never read the 14th Amendment, I went to again this morning, you ought to look it up. You're going to see a lot of this stuff will get thrown out in court. But you have to understand, when you go to court, you have to have standing and a reason why. Then you have to have lawyers, and it takes some while to do that. What bothers me the most is the little people that get hurt, the person who needs their medicine, the person who's changing, the person who is trying to get a sense of identity. Maybe those of you forgot that there was a thriving African-American community in Miami. Then when the interstate highway was coming in, they were told, no, the community will not be interfered with at all. will be fine. It blew right the community, right through the community, put that massive road in all the building, and it was never the same since. But for every action, there is a reaction.
Same
what-
thing happened in the Bronx.
What does give me hope, and I think Bobby is right, you start with something small. I hate when I say this. When you've lived longer than 3/4 of a century, you see things. You see things. And Bobby's right. You begin small.
Yeah.
You get a Juneteenth, you begin. The bus driver with a hand.
Yes.
The 14th Amendment is not going away. And for every action, there is a reaction. And it takes something a lot of us, you and I don't have, I especially, is patience, but we're going to overcome this. We will overcome. Bless you all, everybody. Bless you, bless you, bless you.
Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Michelle. Thank you,
Bye.
Michelle, for turning on my light.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you all for being here.
Lovely
And the
share
readers
today.
and all.
Wonderful.
Thanks, thanks, thanks.
And to
And
Arrakis
thanks,
we
Donald,
go.
for changing the font, because when it was that small, like even with glasses on, I couldn't read along.
That's okay. We
Thank you.
learned. We learned. Next time, bigger font. Okay. All right, everybody.